I wanted to say that I know everybody doesn't agree on sharing this. I feel like I'm lost. And just hoping that one day Katlyn's story will help someone. I definitely needed somebody to be held accountable. I needed to tell Katlyn's story, you know? I needed people to know about her. She was beautiful, she was smart, and she loved to shop and dance, and she had so many friends. I always described her as glitter. She expressed her individuality through her hair. She always had different colors, and it was always so cute on her. I loved the purple on her.
She used to travel for those music festivals. I mean, she's been all around the world.
Yeah, the shuffling queen. That's what we always say.
She had the best sense of humor. She loved Milani. She loved her daughter. She was single. She was getting a new apartment and she was starting over.
I mean, did you worry at all about her safety there?
No, I thought, man, she's near me, and I never thought this would happen. It never crossed my mind.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
My roommate's daughter just came and woke me up in my bedroom.
She told me that something was wrong with Mommy, and that Mommy wouldn't wake up.
Is she breathing?
Yes. No, I don't know. We need to get down here.
Sheriff's office.
I was woken up to a phone call.
Do you know what time it was?
5:35 a.m. It was Jacob on the phone saying that Katlyn is unresponsive. They're doing CPR and the EMS is there.
My sister called. She's like, Sherry, get to Katlyn's right now. Something's wrong. And my only thought was, let me get to that baby. Who's up there with Milani?
Where's the baby at?
They're in the living room.
Okay,
She's in the living room.
I grabbed her and she just like melted into me. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
The way the code of Virginia is, nobody can get in trouble for overdoses.
I swear to God.
They asked me, does she do drugs? Do I do drugs? Did you give her something? Does she take something? I was like, I don't do drugs.
All the signs are looking for like an overdose.
The police were adamant that it was a drug overdose. And I'm like, she doesn't do drugs.
We're taking off at this point. She's obviously being transported.
I genuinely believed she's gonna be okay. She had CPR, she was alive, she had a heartbeat. She was gonna be okay.
In the hospital, they even wanted to bring a chaplain in, and I was like, no, my child's not gonna die. I don't need a chaplain in right now. A tech came to me and walked me outside. She said, it wasn't drugs, someone hurt your baby. Who would want to hurt her? And she loved everybody, and everybody loved her, She didn't have enemies.
That you were aware of?
Yeah. I will never stop saying my daughter's name, and I will never stop seeking justice for her. I walk into the hospital, saw my daughter there, and I watched her do CPR, and I'll never forget that.
On October 7, 2022, as Crystal Sale arrived at the hospital bedside of her daughter, Katlyn Lyon Montgomery, she knew the two people she needed most. And would you say your sisters have really stepped up for you?
Absolutely. I don't know what I'd done without my sisters.
The oldest of the sisters, Sherry Cox, was taking care of Katlyn's then 4-year-old daughter, Milani, while periodically checking in on Katlyn in the hospital.
I knew it was bad.
What did you think had happened to Katlyn?
I didn't know.
I called Sherry,
The first thing she said is something was wrong with Katlyn, but they didn't know what.
Sherry told their youngest sister, Tina Hopkins, nearly 5,000 miles away in Hawaii, that 28-year-old Katlyn was unconscious and in grave condition.
You know, Sherry told me, like, you have to come home. It's not good.
I was just shocked that this was even happening and just confused.
Especially when doctors told her that Katlyn sustained injuries to her neck and head.
Any medical history?
While first responders had initially thought Katlyn had suffered a drug overdose,
She's ODing. She's ODing.
her physical injuries and the lack of drugs found at the scene
Any drugs, anything?
indicated Katlyn was actually the victim of a violent assault.
That she had been strangled.
We're speechless, we're baffled. Like, who would have done this?
I got a phone call to take a strangulation report.
Lead investigator Robbie Burnett with the Bedford County, Virginia Sheriff's Office focused on documenting Katlyn's injuries.
I saw two distinctive marks parallel to each other on her neck.
Since those marks weren't visible until after Katlyn had arrived at the hospital, Burnett says it helped timestamp the attack.
It was very recent,
Like when you say very recent.
within an hour or so, most likely, of when the call came in.
So her apartment's on the second floor.
Right on the end of the building.
Yes.
Shortly after learning about Katlyn's injuries, investigator Michelle Alderson was sent to secure and process Katlyn's apartment, now a crime scene. One that had been disturbed by first responders, EMTs, and Katlyn and her roommate Jacob Piercy's dogs.
You get these dogs out of here best you can.
So my scene was not as exact as I would like my crime scenes to be.
Investigator Alderson set out to find what could have caused the injuries on Katlyn's neck. She found a huge clue wrapped up in Katlyn's comforter.
It was a multiple charging cord adapter.
Did they look like they matched what had been described on her neck?
I would call them consistent, yes.
With the cords found on the bed, Alderson suspected that Katlyn was attacked there, but she soon learned that first responders, not suspecting foul play at that time, had given the family permission to wash Katlyn's sheets and clean up.
I can clean it up. That's okay.
Doesn't that make it difficult to obtain DNA,
Yes.
fingerprints?
Yes, yes.
Investigators were unable to recover any DNA or fingerprints at the scene, including any on those charging cords. As they searched for evidence identifying Katlyn's attacker, doctors struggled to revive her. After 29 hours, Katlyn was officially declared brain dead the next morning, October 8th.
I remember going to her. One of the only things I remember is telling her I'm sorry that I couldn't protect her. I can say that there are no words that have been invented to describe how this feels. It's excruciating.
I just can't comprehend that she's gone forever. Like, I can't go there.
Tina arrived just in time to help say goodbye.
My instinct is just to take charge and fix whatever's wrong. That affects me greatly, that I couldn't fix it for my sister and our family.
Tina documented the moment Katlyn was escorted to fulfill her final wishes to be an organ donor. Tina shared the video on TikTok.
My family and I have been through a tragedy.
She and the rest of her family started posting photos and videos
I'm gonna talk about my niece.
memorializing Katlyn.
She liked music, right?
I love music, specifically electronic dance music.
Music that Katlyn had discovered with her older brother, Jake Lyon.
And there was this like dance party type thing. I know at the end of the night, she ran up and like bear hugged me. She's like, I want to do this all the time.
Why? What is it? Tell me, what is it that she took to?
I think just the energy and the social element. How she would draw a crowd.
She loved life. She absolutely loved life.
A life that had changed unexpectedly when Katlyn learned she was pregnant with Milani.
I mean, we were very supportive and was like, we'll help any way we can.
But the always independent Katlyn didn't need much help, says Crystal, even with Milani's father out of the picture and while working full-time as a restaurant manager.
Katlyn was rocking it. She was rocking it.
What do you mean rocking it?
She was providing for her child.
Katlyn's family now had to grapple with the reality that someone had intentionally taken her from her beloved child.
I still can't believe my daughter was murdered.
She said, "You're going to find whoever did this to my daughter." I said, "There will be no stone left unturned."
So who's the first person you're looking at?
We definitely looked at Jacob Piercy, the roommate.
With no sign of forced entry and being the only other adult in the apartment, Katlyn's new roommate, Jacob Piercy, who had called 911 reporting her injured, was an obvious suspect.
Investigators told us that it was 99% sure he did it.
But Tina says she suspected this man, Katlyn's ex-boyfriend, Trenton Fry, whom she had broken up with 10 days earlier.
That was my first gut instinct.
You first saw Trenton?
I did.
Trenton lived 3 hours away in North Carolina, so investigators gave him a call.
He said that he was in North Carolina working the entire time. He agreed to come up for an interview, appeared to be cooperative.
So focus intensified on Jacob Piercy, especially when investigators learned what Milani said she witnessed that night. "My brother killed my mom." Brother was the nickname she used for Jacob Piercy. Did you have anything to do with hurting Katlyn?
Absolutely not.
Outfit of the day. Again, these videos are just for my sisters, so I'm not going anywhere today.
Tina, you're not going anywhere today because your husband has stopped giving you lunch money.
For Tina, Crystal, and Sherry, making TikTok videos started as a fun way to connect their family. That changed after Katlyn's death.
My niece was murdered. We don't have hardly any information.
We felt wronged, and we weren't going to stop fighting.
In those agonizing early days, Crystal was too deep in her grief to speak publicly. So Tina stepped up to post updates on the case.
There is an ongoing investigation.
When did you last see her?
We were hanging out. Stop. We were out here watching TV.
That investigation centered on Katlyn's roommate, Jacob Piercy.
We were looking at him pretty heavy at first.
What do you mean?
Meaning he was our number one suspect at that point. In my mind, I'm just here to tell him what I can tell him, help him figure out what could have happened, what couldn't have happened. I was in full denial.
But after being interviewed several times, having his body photographed for possible defensive wounds, and his cell phone confiscated, Jacob Piercy knew he was in serious trouble. Were you scared you'd be blamed for whatever happened to her?
Absolutely. I'm the main suspect of something so terrible. We're still at a loss at that point because he's fully cooperating and we haven't caught him in a lie yet.
What troubled investigators was 4-year-old Milani's statement. She said she had seen Jacob killing her mother, but Burnett soon discovered that she had actually witnessed Jacob performing CPR.
She actually did the motions of her with her hands of what Jacob was doing to her.
Going like this.
Yeah, that's the motion she made.
To be sure, Burnett reviewed the 911 call. You can hear Jacob doing CPR.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You could tell he was definitely putting effort in. I thought I had done enough. But I think that's what tears me up the most. It's just, I wasn't able to save her,
At that point, investigators began to look closer at Katlyn's ex-boyfriend, Trenton Fry. They tried calling him in North Carolina a couple of days after their initial conversation, but learned He was unable to talk to them.
He checked himself into a mental health facility.
And what did that say to you?
He had some kind of break. Something happened to him, apparently.
So investigators turned to Katlyn's friends to learn more about the relationship. Do you think he was the person he presented himself to, Katlyn?
Absolutely not.
Hannah McDowell met Katlyn 2 years earlier when she landed a job at the restaurant Katlyn managed. Sharing a love for music and dancing, they became fast friends and eventually roommates. They also shared their frustrations about the local dating scene in Bedford County, Virginia, which prompted them to look for love online. What was she looking for?
Well, she wanted someone that was supportive and be a father to Milani as well, and possibly get married.
In January of 2022, when Katlyn connected with Trenton on a dating app, the tall, fitness-obsessed, and apparently successful North Carolina native seemed to be marriage material. How had she described him to you?
Well, he had his stuff together. She was excited to have a relationship with him.
When Katlyn's Aunt Sherry met Trenton, she admits she was impressed.
He told me that he owned a security company and he owned his own construction company. We had talked about him doing my floors because he had me thinking he was, you know, this awesome builder.
And then eventually, he was at the apartment all the time.
Which made Hannah wonder how Trenton, who lived 3 hours away, could spend weeks on end at their apartment while also running 2 businesses.
And when I would leave in the morning, when I would come home from lunch, when I would get home from work, he would always just be on the couch.
And she says over time, it seemed Katlyn wasn't leaving the apartment much either.
She's quiet. She didn't hang out with friends. She was just very isolated.
Did you get the feeling that it was because of him? That she wasn't going out as much, dancing as much?
Yes. And he would track her location on her phone. I feel like she was chained to him almost.
I can't say that I liked him, but I can't say that I didn't like him.
While Crystal had her concerns about the relationship with Trenton, Katlyn never confided that anything was wrong.
She's always been so strong, so I knew my daughter could handle herself.
But Katlyn did express some frustration with the relationship to her Aunt Sherry.
She said, I'm so tired of paying for everything. She said, if he's got all this money, these businesses, why does he have money? And I said, well, Katlyn, that's a red flag right there.
More red flags appeared when he tried to convince her to move with him to North Carolina, where he said he would find them an apartment.
In reality, he was not reliable and wasn't fulfilling what she thought he was going to do.
In early September 2022, Trenton admitted the truth. He couldn't find an apartment because he lacked the credit and source of income to qualify.
Katlyn called me from work and she was screaming and crying, just like bawling, crying. And she was like, he's a liar. He lied about everything. He doesn't have a job.
Days later, Katlyn announced she was breaking up with him. She was done?
She was done.
So she cut him off?
She did. She blocked him.
Oh, she actually blocked him, too.
She blocked him, yeah.
And that's when Katlyn learned her friend Jacob Piercy was also looking for a place and asked if he wanted to find an apartment with her and Milani.
They finally found this one apartment, and we were so excited that they were going to be so close to us.
While Katlyn was making a fresh start, it seemed Trenton Fry did not want to let her go.
He was actually sitting in the parking lot of her apartment watching everything Katlyn was doing.
Have you seen a big change in your sister?
Mm-hmm. She's just sad all the time. She has bags under her eyes now where she didn't have them before because she don't sleep. She's not sleeping.
I woke up this morning in sheer panic.
In the days following Katlyn's death, Crystal began sharing her grief with others on TikTok.
I'll get a text message, and for an instant I'll think that it's Katlyn.
I ended up seeing some of her TikToks by accident. She was completely innocent. She didn't do anything wrong.
Investigator Burnett was convinced that Trenton Fry had somehow gotten into Katlyn's apartment and strangled her.
Why did Trenton Fry kill the woman he said he loved?
I think it's because she told him no, and he couldn't take the rejection from her.
Investigator Burnett now needed to prove it.
We started looking at, obviously more of his cell phone records, tracking that history.
We found that his phone pings were in the area of Forest, Virginia.
Commonwealth Attorney Wes Nance was assigned the case. He says investigators were able to obtain Trenton Fry's cell phone after he checked himself into that mental health facility in North Carolina. And that's how they learned that the device had started pinging off a cell tower in Virginia on October 4th, 3 days before Katlyn's attack.
He wasn't just in Virginia, he was in at least the area of Katlyn's new apartment complex.
Investigators canvassed the apartment complex and found 2 of Katlyn's neighbors who remembered seeing an unfamiliar man sitting at a picnic table for hours. One snapped a photo of the stranger on the afternoon of October 6th, the day before Katlyn's attack.
Who do you believe that is?
Well, we later determined it to be Trenton Fry.
How close to Katlyn's apartment is that? Why there?
So this is an elevated vantage point. It looks directly down on her building.
Did Katlyn Montgomery have any idea that somebody had been watching her for days?
No, ma'am.
And does it appear that she wasn't just being watched, she was being followed and stalked?
Absolutely, yeah.
Investigators learned 2 hours after that photo was taken, Trenton Fry's SUV was recorded by a surveillance camera pulling into a gas station near the apartment complex. He was seen inside the store, now wearing all black. It was around that time that Fry texted Aunt Sherry.
He wanted to know if I still wanted my floors finished, and I didn't respond back to him. I immediately called Katlyn, where she unblocks the number and tells him, do not call my aunt anymore.
The text between Katlyn and Trenton Fry, says prosecutor Nance, became heated. Fry made it clear he knew she was living with Jacob Piercy, and he didn't like it.
So there's an anger and jealousy underlying those text messages. He starts to call her a piece of and tell her that karma is a bitch.
Jacob Piercy says that Katlyn called him sounding frightened.
At one point, she told me that she wanted to go to her mom's house and pick up her self-defense weapon that she has, her pistol.
Katlyn didn't go through with that plan. Later, Jacob, Katlyn, and Milani had dinner together and watched TV. Around midnight, Jacob says he heard a noise near their second-floor balcony.
Spread open the curtains real quick to look. I didn't see anything.
Did you lock or unlock the sliding door?
Yeah, I believe I locked it.
But investigators later learned the lock on the sliding glass door was broken, and they suspected that's how Trenton Fry gained entry. His Google searches revealed that he had looked up the layout of the unit, which they believed helped him find Katlyn's bedroom.
I think it was an absolute brutal, sudden sneak attack on a then sleeping Katlyn.
Fry strangled Katlyn, investigators say, with those charging cords, while her daughter Milani slept nearby.
With her child laying beside her, I don't think it gets much worse.
After Fry left, says Nance, Milani alerted Jacob Piercy that something was wrong with her mother. Trenton Fry's digital footprint from that morning, says Nance, gives him away.
Mr. Fry started to Google breaking news, and specifically, he looked to see if he had any arrest warrants out for himself.
There weren't any warrants for him at the time. But 13 days later, investigators have one in hand as they traveled to the mental health facility in North Carolina.
I'm not stupid. I know you guys are here to take me in.
Trenton Fry agreed to talk to investigators and denied any involvement in Katlyn's death. He said he had checked himself into the hospital because the only person he had ever considered harming was himself.
Knowing who I am, I could never hurt her on how much I cared about her.
He did finally admit he had been in Virginia, but claimed he was only looking for a job and apartment, hoping that he could eventually convince Katlyn to get back together.
I was trying to give her space while I figured everything out.
But when challenged with evidence that he was at her apartment complex,
I'm missing pieces of time for like the last month.
Trenton Fry claimed he had no memory of it, that he sometimes blacked out for long periods of time, including the hours around Katlyn's attack.
Is there anything else that could contribute to your memory loss? Drugs? No, alcohol. No, you guys can test me.
Investigators had heard enough.
You're going to jail today. Just turn around.
And took Trenton Fry into custody.
And how did you feel that he had been arrested?
Relieved that somebody was going to be, held accountable.
Trenton Fry was charged with first-degree murder and pleaded not guilty.
There's no evidence, no hard evidence, nothing you can point to prove that Trenton was ever in that apartment.
Trenton Fry's defense attorney, Joseph Sanzone, insists his client didn't kill Katlyn. He prepared to argue at trial that there wasn't a murder at all.
I don't think anybody tried to kill Katlyn. I think it was purely an accident.
Today marks 2 months. 2 months from the last time that I told my daughter I loved her. Tomorrow marks 3 months. Today is 16 months. It's been 25 months since my 28-year-old daughter was murdered.
As the months dragged on awaiting trial, Crystal and her family demanded justice for Katlyn on billboards purchased around town.
We now have a new court date. This one should be it, and I pray to God that it is.
Trenton Fry entered the courtroom in March of 2025, 2.5 years after Katlyn's death.
Her family was there, her brothers were there, her aunts were there.
CBS Roanoke reporter Layla Mitchell covered the trial.
Prosecutors argue that Trenton Fry stalked, obsessed over, and ultimately strangled Katlyn Lyon.
Layla Mitchell reported on TV. Katlyn's family updated their growing community of supporters on TikTok, while prosecutor Wes Nance made his case to the most important audience of all, the jury.
Law enforcement called him later that same afternoon. Mr. Fry told him, I wasn't in Virginia, I was working in North Carolina, I didn't even know where Katlyn lived. Mr. Fry had given a number of inconsistent statements, what I would absolutely characterize as lies, because they were all in conflict with one another. And so they approached him again. And this time he relied on an excuse out of a bad soap opera and claimed he had amnesia.
I don't remember any of it. My whole head has been messed up.
But prosecutor Wes Nance didn't have to rely on Fry's memory. Not only did he have the digital data from Fry's phone, placing him in the area, investigators had also discovered that his device made one very important connection after Katlyn and her daughter went to bed.
At 4:15, right after they go to bed, Trenton Fry's cell phone connects to the iPad, and the iPad shows the connection.
Fry's phone had automatically connected to Katlyn's iPad via Bluetooth, providing the only evidence as Nance that placed Fry inside Katlyn's apartment.
Now we have the two of them within feet of each other during the window of the injuries.
And what about that sound that Jacob Piercy heard earlier that evening? Nance believes that it was Trenton Fry positioning this metal bench that belonged to their downstairs neighbor on the brick wall under their balcony.
The perfect extra step or two that Mr. Fry would have needed to get to that second floor.
Trenton Fry's defense attorney, Joseph Sanzone, concedes that Fry, devastated after the breakup, was in the area and admits that Fry was at Katlyn's apartment complex, but says he was only outside.
I agree with the billboards in this case. Justice for Katlyn. But it should happen after a review of all the evidence.
He points to the lack of DNA evidence at the scene and disputes the prosecution's iPad Bluetooth connection theory.
We don't know where the iPad was.
And that's because the iPad was recovered by investigators at Aunt Sherry's house. She told them she grabbed it from Katlyn's apartment when she picked up Milani after the attack.
But it was in the apartment, right?
Oh, no, we don't know that. We just know it connected.
Would you admit, though, that he's a pretty unlucky guy, that he happens to be outside the apartment when someone else kills his ex-girlfriend?
Yeah, and whoever did it in that circumstance is the luckiest guy.
Jacob Piercy, the man who found Katlyn Lyon unresponsive, took the stand to testify today.
Jacob Piercy, Sanzone argued, was the more likely killer.
What would be Jacob Piercy's motive for killing Katlyn?
I don't think anybody tried to kill Katlyn. I think it was purely an accident.
Sanzone suggests that Jacob Piercy strangled Katlyn in a consensual sex act, one that went too far.
I was furious. He degraded. He humiliated my daughter. Oh, I was so mad.
The medical examiner found no evidence of any sexual assault or even recent sexual activity. This is not sex gone wrong. This is a murder.
A murder, Sanzone says, Trenton Fry couldn't have committed, saying it was impossible for Fry to get into Katlyn's apartment, kill her, and get away without waking anyone, especially the dogs.
Isn't it possible that someone slipped into the apartment quietly, strangled her, and left, and not alarm the dogs?
Only Tom Cruise can do that as far as I know. I just can't imagine in real life.
Sanzone has a witness whom he believes can help make his case, Trenton Fry himself.
Did you expect Trent to take the stand?
I didn't. I was shocked.
When Trenton Fry took the stand to tell the jury his story, he appeared to have regained his memory of his actions that night.
Did you do anything except watch?
No, that's all I did, was watch and walk around.
If they don't hear from your client, they're not going to believe what you say. They need to hear from the person.
I don't ever remember being in the apartment because I never was.
Prosecutor Wes Nance challenged Fry's story.
You were spying on her.
Yes.
You were gathering intel on her.
Yes.
But Fry remained adamant that he could not have killed Katlyn.
And I could not have climbed that balcony without making a sound. I would have to be a ninja of some sort.
But Nan says that gas station surveillance photo of Fry, taken hours before the murder, proves that he dressed the part.
A ninja is known for being in stealth mode, and I think changing his outfit to black is him going into stealth mode.
Don't let the excuses, don't let the wordplay, don't let the memory pass confuse you. Trenton Fry's guilty, first degree murder.
But would that add up to reasonable doubt for the jury?
Until they have some proof that my client was inside that apartment, nothing in this case can be proven, not one thing.
Today, the jury will be told that they can either find Trenton Fry guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or they can find him not guilty at all.
All of our nerves are on edge. So wish us all luck today. It's gonna be rough.
We weren't gonna leave, whether it was an hour or 20 hours.
But you didn't have to wait very long, did you?
No.
The jury wasted no time today, deliberating for just about an hour.
Because it came back so quick, I was very concerned that it didn't go the way that we wanted.
Moments later, Crystal heard the 3 words she had been praying for.
Guilty, first degree.
Trenton Fry was found guilty of first-degree murder in Katlyn's death.
I was staring at his face the entire time, and he had no reaction when the verdict was read. Katlyn's family burst into tears.
Having Trenton Fry be accountable for his actions does bring our family a little bit of peace.
Tina, flanked by her sisters and Katlyn's brothers, announced the verdict to their supporters.
This entire process has been brutal for our family.
4 months later, they returned to court for Trenton Fry's sentencing.
This man didn't just take a life, he destroyed a family.
Katlyn's brother spoke about the impact on Milani.
He left my niece to wake up next to her mother's lifeless body. She now lives in fear of the dark and the monsters that come into your home while you're sleeping.
I've begged God too many times to count to please take me. Let me die because the pain is unbearable.
Crystal was clear what she hoped for her daughter's killer.
I was sentenced to a lifetime without my daughter. Milani was sentenced to a lifetime without her mama, so he needs life.
Mr. Fry, if you would stand, please. Sir, is there anything you wish to say?
Yes.
Trenton Fry turned to Katlyn's family.
I probably have not felt it on the level that you all have, but I have felt it for her loss, and I truly am sorry for the loss that you have experienced.
But he never took responsibility for Katlyn's murder.
The amount of terror, the amount of horror inflicted upon this young, innocent woman is unimaginable.
Responsibility that Judge James Updike reminded him was his alone.
Unimaginable to anyone, to everybody, except you. Because you were there. You saw it. You caused it. I hereby sentence you to imprisonment for life.
Life in prison.
Even though we got the verdict we wanted, my daughter's still not here. If I could walk out of that courtroom and hugged her, then I would have won. Nobody won. I think that everyone that has lost their lives to domestic violence, their names need to be said.
Crystal's TikTok videos are now focused on sharing Katlyn's experience and hoping her story could help save someone else.
I don't want another mother, another family to go through what we're going through. I have to be my daughter's voice, and I have to help save other women.
She and her family have embraced the man who did all he could to save Katlyn, Jacob Piercy.
He's a hero. She needed him, and he was doing everything he could to help her.
They opened up and welcomed me to Christmases and Thanksgivings and hangouts and birthdays and cookouts, and they've really made me feel like part of the family.
A family still adapting in Katlyn's absence.
In my head, it's burning up.
Crystal enjoys a familiar role as Milani's grandmother, while Aunt Sherry, who always shared a special bond with Katlyn and her little girl, has become Milani's guardian.
What does she call you?
She calls me Mama now, Mommy.
Was that hard for you at first?
Yes, because I didn't want my sister to be upset because I didn't want her to think I was taking Milani from Katlyn, erasing Katlyn.
I was like, absolutely not, you know? You are her mommy now. She knows she's got mommy number one that had her, Katlyn, but you're her mommy now.
Milani will get to know her first mom through the journals she left.
Your younger self would be so envious of where you are now. You're such a hard worker and such an amazing mother.
Katlyn, as she saw herself.
You're beautiful, powerful, and so strong.
Her final entry focused on one subject: love.
I am loved. I deserve to be loved. I am worthy of love. She knew that she was loved.
She still is.
Very much so.
Welcome to Post Mortem. I'm your host, Anne Marie Green, and today we are discussing the case of 28-year-old Katlyn Lyon Montgomery, who was found unresponsive by her roommate in October of 2022. When she later died of her injuries to her head and her neck at the hospital, the case evolved into a homicide investigation, and it sparked a social media fight for justice from her family. So joining me today is 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty to talk about this case. Thank you, Erin.
It's another tough one, Anne-Marie, because Katlyn's mother described her as glitter. She was such a loss. So it's a tough case to discuss.
All right, so let's get into this case. In the early morning hours of October 7th, 2022, Katlyn Montgomery was rushed to the hospital after her roommate, Jacob Piercy, called 911. Now, and this is a heartbreaking part of this, it was her 4-year-old daughter who first alerted Jacob that her mom would not wake up. But Katlyn's home wasn't initially treated as a crime scene, and that's because first responders thought that Katlyn probably overdosed on drugs. At the hospital, doctors discovered the bruises around her neck. So my question to you is, how did first responders miss this? How did they miss that there was a possible strangulation here?
Anne-Marie, this was a new one for me because, as it turns out, she had been so recently attacked that those bruises didn't come out and they didn't see anything. And because she was unresponsive and because she was young, they assumed she must have taken something. It must have been an overdose. And this case really serves as a reminder, and I hear this all the time, of why every death scene has to be treated like a homicide. But the other side of this is, of course, that the first responders, she was still alive. Their priority was not that scene. They wanted to save her life.
Yeah. And now that I'm talking it out with you, I can count the number of times that I've maybe hit my thigh on a table and said to myself, boy, that's going to bruise. And I know the bruise isn't going to pop up probably for another hour or so. And so when I think about that, it makes sense that the bruises would not have been visible by the time the first responders were there.
You're absolutely right. In fact, in many strangulation cases, I mean, there may be no bruises at all, or they may be internal and not show up on the outside. And this was an attack that was very quick. She was probably asleep, so there were no defensive wounds.
But those bruises did become visible at the hospital. And I thought it was really interesting that actually those bruises helped a lot in terms of creating like a timestamp for the attack.
The fact that the bruises didn't immediately appear actually, in a weird way, helped the investigation because it helped the lead investigator to determine approximately what time the attack happened. And what they believe is that it happened about an hour before Jacob Piercy called 911, which would make it somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m. And that becomes very important during the trial.
Mm-hmm. Do investigators know where Katlyn's daughter, Milani, was when the attack happened?
Oh, this is so sad. Yeah, she was in bed with her mother. Hopefully she won't have any memories if she saw any of it. She was just 4 years of age when this happened. But because she was there, she was either awakened by it or awoke on her own right afterwards. And thank God that she ran to get Jacob, because to be honest, if she had not gotten Jacob right away, those certainly the bruises would have appeared, but they might not have been able to figure out exactly when she had been murdered.
So after Katlyn dies of her injuries, investigators almost immediately zero in on Jacob Piercy, her roommate. At one point, they actually tell Katlyn's family that they're 99% sure that it's Jacob. So what made them sort of pivot from being 99% sure that it's the roommate to looking at, well, what could that 1% be?
Well, I mean, there's a reason why investigators first looked at Jacob Piercy. For one reason, he was the only other adult in the apartment. It was Katlyn, her daughter, and Jacob Piercy. There is no sign of forced entry. This was actually Jacob Piercy's first night living in the apartment. He had just moved in the evening before she was attacked. And they learned that he had tried to ask Katlyn out. And so they're thinking, maybe she spurned him. But on the other side of that, he was so cooperative and handed over his phone right away and wanted to do whatever he could to help out the investigation. And that just didn't fit with someone who was trying to hide what he had done. And I should point out, they're also hearing from the family that there was somebody else that the family suspected. But I have to tell you, they were looking hard at Jacob Piercy, and he knew it. He was scared. He was.
Yeah, I felt for him, but he looks a little suspicious.
The investigator, which I thought really helped him, before they really moved off of Jacob, he went back and listened to the 911 call, and you could hear that Jacob was trying to do what he could to save her life.
Right.
So it did make investigators finally look at somebody else.
Right. And you mentioned that her family was mentioning, hey, there is someone else you should look at. Investigators start looking at Katlyn's ex-boyfriend. His name is Trenton Fry, and he's got a motive because 10 days before the attack, she dumped him. She had discovered that he was really kind of overplaying this idea that he was a successful businessman. And he spun this whole story about who he was and what he did for a living. And so she wastes no time. She breaks up with him. She blocks him. Erin, the investigators and the prosecutor, they're really kind of characterizing this as a case of domestic violence. I know you've covered many domestic violence cases. When women leave their partners, they are particularly vulnerable.
I've covered too many of these stories, Anne-Marie, and if there's anything that viewers and listeners take away from this story, I want it to be that. And that certainly seems to be the case in Katlyn's case. So Trenton Fry, on paper, looked like the perfect guy. He had done a lot to promote this image of himself as the owner of a security business and construction business. And he apparently, according to the prosecution, was very upset when Katlyn held him accountable for the lies, when it turned out that He may have had those businesses, but he wasn't making any real money. He didn't have good credit. And she was upending that image that he had created.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one other, I think, important point. We find out later that Katlyn wasn't the only woman in his life. He had other girlfriends.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, no, it's true. And apparently, this fact that Katlyn could walk away so easily, according to the prosecutor, was enough to make him angry.
See, to me, that's, those one of those red flags that this is not about love. This is about ownership.
That's certainly what the prosecution believes was the motive.
So, Fry, of course, tells investigators he wasn't anywhere close to Katlyn when this attack happened, that he was hours away. He was working in North Carolina, except they find some pretty solid evidence that he wasn't.
For one thing, they noticed that there were cell phone tower pings that occurred in Virginia when he had told investigators he was in North Carolina. And those pings started 3 days before the attack. And then another interesting thing is that 2 of Katlyn's neighbors saw an unfamiliar man sitting outside the apartments. And one neighbor was so scared of this guy that she actually went home to her parents. So he must have been sending off really creepy vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person actually took a picture, and it's time-stamped on October 6th, which is a day before she was attacked.
Then we get to what investigators uncover with the browser history. They figure out that he's been actually looking at the layout of her apartment.
And that is very helpful because this is a case where you have to wonder, how did he get into the apartment? Her apartment was on the 2nd floor. There isn't like a fire escape or anything. So you're wondering that. And how was someone able to find her room so quickly, kill her, get out, and get away? In a very short period of time. So that layout really mattered because it showed that he was trying to figure out where everybody was in the apartment. And he had, as you point out, Emery, those 3 days sitting out there. So I think the prosecution's theory was that he was outside looking where the lights were and could figure out where was her bedroom as opposed to Jacob Piercy's.
I do find kind of that part of the case challenging, that he was able to slip in and slip out without anyone noticing, without making noise. And there are dogs in the apartment.
Anne-Marie, I had the biggest problem with that because dogs bark at everything. Now, I understand why Katlyn's dog might not have barked because Katlyn's dog knew Trenton Fry. But what troubled me was that there are also 2 dogs in Jacob Piercy's room. But the prosecutor says those dogs were in a closed room with Jacob. Jacob wasn't being threatened. And so there wasn't a reason for the dogs to bark.
And the other thing is, often it's very difficult to disturb a scene without leaving something behind. And investigators found nothing that really placed Fry inside Katlyn's apartment.
That is true. And that was the strongest argument that the defense leaned on at trial. But that scene was so contaminated by dogs and people and first responders and made it more difficult for investigators later on. Now, the only real evidence that pointed to Trenton Fry being in the apartment is this time when Trenton Fry's phone connects to Katlyn's iPad, which is very damaging. And the prosecution uses that to say he had to be in the apartment to make that connection. But what the defense argued was, how do you know that iPad was actually in the apartment at that time? Because when Katlyn's aunt came to the scene, when they first thought it was an overdose, Aunt Sherry took the iPad home with her, and that's where investigators got it.
When investigators sort of confront Fry with the evidence that they have about allegedly being in Katlyn's apartment, he claims he has no memory of it. And he starts to talk about, he has periods of blacking out. We've heard this before, Erin.
And Emery, if we've heard it a lot, think how often the investigators have heard that.
October 20th, 2022, Trenton Fry is charged with Katlyn's murder, and he pleads not guilty. Now, before Trenton Fry's trial even began, Katlyn's mother, Crystal, her two aunts, Sherry and Tina, they took to social media. They started posting videos on TikTok to talk about the case. And it's definitely something that we've been seeing, whether it's the families of victims wanting more attention on a case that hasn't been solved, or wanting more attention on a suspect who has been charged.
I just did a case involving Molly Bish, and her sister used TikTok to try to get new tips and new evidence. So, yes, it's happening all the time. In this case, though, as reporters, you really get a sense of what this family went through in a way you couldn't any other way. Katlyn's mother, Crystal, happens to have two sisters, and these women all are very supportive of each other. And so when Crystal was having difficulty grappling with her pain and her loss, her sisters come through, and the way they support her is on TikTok and telling people what's happening and how we have to have justice for Katlyn. They really were pushing for that.
A lot of these videos really brought Katlyn to life. Like, she pops off the screen.
Oh, she does. I often feel this, but I felt this in particular in this case, that I wish I'd known Katlyn Montgomery. As I mentioned, her mom called her Glitter, and she does remind you of Glitter. She was very adept at a dance called shuffling. I was not familiar with that before I started on this story. It's this very, very quick step dance that Katlyn had learned from her brother. And remember, Katlyn Montgomery was this tiny little thing. And so really what you see when you see videos of her are just her little feet moving. And so she does pop.
Yeah. Trenton Fry also had support from his family.
Trenton Fry, he has a sister who clearly loves him. And I think she felt she had to defend him if there were all these TikToks pointing the finger at him. And so when the trial started, there were a lot of TikTok videos that she produced to say, wait a minute, maybe he didn't do it. Here's why he didn't do it. Why are we looking at him?
He actually takes the stand in his own defense, which is, as we've said every time it happens, it's unusual. Despite the fact that it seems to happen more often than not on 48 hours, it's not normal.
It is not. The general view of defense attorneys is you do not put your client who's standing trial for murder on the stand. But what I've heard in this case is that this particular attorney often puts clients on the stand. And he said to me that he felt in this case, Trenton had to take the stand, that the jury needed to hear from him. And Trenton Fry had to make that decision as well, that he was the one who would take the stand, and he wanted to.
The defense tried to raise doubt during the trial by suggesting that Jacob Piercy had been the one who strangled Katlyn because of some sort of consensual sex act that went too far. I understand the role of the defense, but I just kind of personally, it felt a little icky to kind of throw this out there.
I have to agree with you, Anne-Marie. The defense often, and certainly has the right to raise reasonable doubt where the defense attorney feels it's best. What's wrong with that is the defense knew that there was evidence that contradicted it. The medical examiner actually testified that there was no evidence that she had had recent sexual activity. So I was troubled that would be raised, because it probably wasn't going to be enough to sway the jurors when there was no evidence of it and they heard that. But it did hurt the family. Particularly Caitlin's mother was so upset. And so that one, I struggled with. The defense has the right to do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do.
So it doesn't take the jury long to come to a conclusion here. They're only deliberated for about an hour before delivering the verdict. Trenton Fry was found guilty of first-degree murder and Katlyn's death. 4 months later, they returned to court for Trenton Fry's sentencing. Erin, you were there for the sentencing. What was it like in the courtroom?
Well, of course, I really wanted to go because the defendant might say something accepting responsibility or at least apologizing or something that might give some peace to family members. But in this case, he accepted no responsibility for it. So it upset, I think, people belonging to Caitlin's family, but it really upset the judge. And I think you need to hear it for yourself because it really shows and explains why the judge ended up sentencing him the way he did.
This murder was as cold-blooded, premeditated, and calculated as any I've seen. The manner of death was strangulation. Death was not instantaneous. The amount of terror, the amount of horror inflicted upon this young, innocent woman is unimaginable. Unimaginable to anyone, to everybody, except you. Because you were there. You saw it. You caused it. I hereby sentence you to imprisonment for life. Because in my opinion, a sentence for anything less would be less than what you justly deserve.
You could hear people responding in the courtroom. I think it was from both sides because I know that Caitlin's family, there were like tears, but there were tears on the part of Trenton Fry's family too, who from all appearances, and certainly they testified on his behalf, support him. But this was a judge who had been both a prosecutor and then a judge for 47 years. And you would think had seen everything. And this case really set him off, as you can tell. That gave me chills hearing it again.
Milani, she is with Caitlin's aunt now, but she's not. Why is she not living with her grandmother, Caitlin's mom?
Aunt Sherry has always been the mother hen of the family. She's the oldest of the three sisters. And she had a very close relationship with Katlyn and Milani. And so at this point, she is raising Milani. But Crystal is all good with that because she can see her granddaughter anytime she wants. And I think from the family's perspective, they all have said this is definitely the right way to do it. And you could just see she is blossoming as a child.
And I think we have a little bit more sound about how she's doing.
There were moments in the beginning that, it was heartbreaking, but we do everything we can to keep her busy, and she's just a happy little girl.
What does she call you?
She calls me Mama now, Mommy.
Was that hard for you at first?
Yes, because I didn't want my sister to be upset because I didn't want her to think I was taking Milani from Katlyn and erasing Katlyn, and I'm not trying to do that. But how can I tell Milani not to call me Mama when I'm doing everything, She's used to being with me. I was the first one to be at the apartment to get her, and from that day on, it was like I've been her person. It's like I rescued her, and she has clung to me. She feels safe with me, and the way we have it works for us.
This is a story of a wonderful, wonderful, warm family that lost a very important member. and they are trying to get through it and make it the best they can for her daughter. It's inspiring and heartbreaking at the same time.
Erin, it's always great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.